Hi and welcome to week 6 of the Renewable Wellbeing journey through Lent.
Well, good evening and welcome to the book launch of Renewable Wellbeing. So well done to everyone in the room, those who have managed to brave Storm Bert and be here in person. And welcome to everyone who is with us online from wherever you are. I'm joined here on the stage by, of course, Ruth Rice, author, multi-book author, author of 3 books, and founder of the Renew Wellbeing movement, and a Manx woman. and by Judith Lay. And if you're from the island, Judith needs no introduction. If you're not from the island, Judith is a presenter on Manx Radio. Among several other things, she's a canon of our cathedral here and is often described as a Manx national treasure. And so Judith will be interviewing Ruth in a few moments. But we'd love this to be as interactive as possible. So on the tables here in the room, you've got some pieces of paper and pens. And if you pass these to Judith, then these can be fed in as part of the discussion. And if you're online, you can use the YouTube live chat, and then you'll be able to feed through any questions that you would like to ask Ruth today. My first introduction to Ruth was through a lady in our church here, Avril, and she came to me very excitedly one Sunday, and she said, "Bill, you've got to meet this woman called Ruth Rice." And being an empowering kind of leader, I said, why don't you meet with her, Avril? Report back. And she came back and she said, no, I've met with her. You really have to meet with Ruth. And so I met with Ruth, and with what I now know to be her trademark passionate gentleness, she started to talk about Renewable Wellbeing and quiet shared spaces where it's okay not to be okay, and that being rooted in the 5 ways to well-being, and very much grounded in a life-giving rhythm of prayer. And that was the start for us here at Broadway Baptist Church, where we developed our own Renew Wellbeing space, which we call Renew Well. And if you're in the room, you can go down afterwards and see it in action. And that's been such a blessing for us. And I know that there are so many. How many Renew Wellbeing spaces now? 280-ish and climbing, and has become a movement across the British Isles and internationally. And there's something really wonderful about that. But there's also just kind of a danger that these fantastic spaces for well-being can be just tucked away in a corner of church life. And what's so exciting about Ruth's new book is it's about taking a Jesus-shaped well-being out to the whole life of the church. And Ruth brings so often to us a prophetic and timely message. So I look forward to this evening unfolding. But before we do anything further, let's just take a moment to pray. Loving Father, we thank you for your great love. We thank you that Jesus is with us by your Spirit here in the room, and as we're gathered right across the internet at this time. Maybe just take a moment where you are to recognize God's presence with you, to recognize his boundless love for you. And loving Father, as we recognize and thank you for your great love towards us, we thank you that you dignify us by calling us to be not just people who indwell your love, but that your love would spread through us, through who we are in Christ and through what we take of you out into the world. And we pray that this evening, as we talk about renewable well-being, that we would hear what you, by your Spirit, would say to your church in this time. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much indeed for that lovely time of prayer, which of course is the best way to root anything, and for your introduction. We'll just skip over the, I think if there's a Manx national treasure anywhere, it's got to be Ruth Rice. And I remember the first time I was recommended to seek out Ruth Rice. And I met Ruth the first time, and I thought, I didn't just want to be your friend, I wanted to be your best friend. That's the kind of person that I thought, I think I've got to join a long queue, Ruth. It is such a privilege, and if I could add my word of welcome, not just to the folk who've braved the elements to be here at Broadway Baptist Church, but to everybody who's joining us online. And talking with Ruth is always a joy, and I can't wait to get... I want to do something I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to do the quick-fire questions that reveals that secret side of Ruth Rice that maybe not everybody knows. I've always wanted to do this, and nobody's let me.
Who said it was a good idea to let Judith Lay interview you?
I don't know, but they were wrong.
Yes, go for it, Judith. Anything.
Right, okay. Main course or dessert?
Dessert.
Spring or autumn?
Autumn.
Cat or dog?
Dog.
Night out at a party? Home in your PJs?
Home in my PJs, yeah.
Now, holiday. Holiday, lounging by the pool, hiking up a mountain.
Oh, lounging by a pool. Used to hike up a mountain.
The mountains just got taller, didn't they?
Yeah.
Right, well, there we are, a little bit of behind the scenes with Ruth. Now, the thing that I remember vividly was the way you kind of suddenly changed the way that I was looking, because I know how the world works. Men never really show their feelings, stiff upper lip, sort out all the problems, strong, never cry, anything like that. And women, well, we know women, we can do everything, can't we? And most of it all at once. We can't just multitask. We can quadruple task, whatever's put in front of us. Yes, I can do that. Yes, of course I can. Yes, I'll help you with that. We can do that. And that was pretty much my worldview. And then I met you again at the instigation. I think it probably was Avril who said, you need to interview...
Bless you, Av.
I know.
You, Av.
Yep. And so I met you. And you said, do you know what? That's a load of rubbish. And I said, well, how do you know? And you said, because I did all of that. And in 2009, I crashed and burnt. And out of that, when you were at your lowest point, out of that grew Renew Wellbeing. And the first one started 2015.
Yeah.
And you just, as Bill has just said, and you were just getting on for 300.
Yeah.
This fabulous movement. And what does that say? It says that it's so needed. So 2021, I think it was, you wrote your first book, and that was with a brilliant title. It was Slow Down, Show Up and Pray.
Yeah.
Year later, the A to Z of Wellbeing, which was described at the time as balm for the soul. And I loved it so much that I begged you to do a mini-series for the radio for it, which was just terrific. And that's full of humor and good sense and supreme honesty. And that's the thing that characterizes what you do, great honesty. Now, I don't want to be funny, Ruth, but...
Why another book? Yeah.
What is there? What is there to write another book about?
That is such a good question, and right now I am asking myself the same question. Do you know, it's funny, because this one, I think I've probably enjoyed writing this one the most. I was an accidental author. I never intended to write the other books. They were a story that needed to be told.
Yeah. And if I could just, I should have said, I mean, your first book was a why and how-to book.
Yes.
It was very much a handbook of, here's the explanation, and then this is the pointers for doing it. So it was very much a textbook.
Yeah.
So,
and then the A to Z came out of that pandemic awfulness. When what do you do whilst you're in the pandemic? Well, write a book. But then this started to grow in me a couple of years ago, which was, sort of, 200 odd centres in, amazing things happening, seeing amazing things happening in the area of churches like this one, just showing up and slowing down and praying and being present and loving it. The feedback from churches that are doing Renew Spaces is, this is good for the church as well as for the community. And I was thinking, well, this is great news. This is all really good. So there's nothing more to do. I've written all the things that need to be written to keep this charity going. And then I began to get a bit concerned. And I was a bit concerned that I could see post-pandemic churches getting busier and busier again. I'm constantly being asked to do stuff about leaders' well-being, and I'm saying, well, hang on, it's this, how could we slow down and do life a bit differently? And I started to ask, oh dear, have I just come up with yet another busy thing for churches to do? Now, we've got a food bank, we'll have one of these, one of those, a Renew Centre. Is this just yet more rotas for the church to get caught up in? And then out of that came, is this actually a Jesus-centered thing? And looking back at John's Gospel and really digging into the character of Jesus and finding within some of my favourite Gospel stories everything that I think I'm beginning to see within this movement. So seeing within the life of Jesus these habits of well-being. In fact, every one of these chapters is actually one of the 5 ways to well-being: connecting, learning, getting active, taking notice, giving, used within mental health services. Every one of these chapters actually covers one of those 5 ways, and they're all Jesus stories. And so I this book was like, every chapter of this book I wrote in a different shepherd's hut. I'd like hire a shepherd's hut for the weekend and then go, I'm going to really look at this gospel story. And instead of looking at the charity or looking at my life, which the others are about, this is looking at the life of Jesus. And it was so, it was just so beautiful to write. I enjoyed my time writing it. I don't enjoy putting it out there and going, what do you think of this? I don't like that at all. It's horrible doing it. But I really loved seeing the life of Jesus in a whole new way through this lens of well-being. And I suppose it was kind of a little cry to the church in general, but humans, anyone with a pulse, to say, I think Jesus shows us what it looks like to live with well-being, and there's no better way to look than through the way of Jesus. Let's not make ourselves more busy trying to do a thing for the mentally ill people, because that's not what Renew Wellbeing is. This is it. And renewable well-being in that, like with renewable energy sources, we've got to give up some of our old energy sources to find the renewables. We can't have both. We can't just keep using up the planet. And in some ways, I think we've been looking in all the wrong places for well-being, even as churches running busy stuff. And this is a cry of the heart to say, what would it look like to be so fascinated with the character of Jesus, to so look at Jesus, live Jesus, be in Jesus, be like Jesus, that actually well-being was like a byproduct of that for the community.
Now, you come from a position of strength because you've been involved in church leadership. So it's not like somebody who has never had a position of leadership saying, I think this is what we should do. And we did vow during the time of COVID, we did vow that we would look carefully at what we picked up again, but we didn't, did we?
No.
We just picked up everything that we'd put down.
With less volunteers than ever before.
Yeah.
And it was interesting, wasn't it? We got a couple of years, and I know it was different here on the Isle of Man because it was a bit safer, but we had a couple of years to go. Let's just pause everything, and then let's just really think deeply about what we start again. And nearly every church has not just started what they had before, but they're busier than ever because people aren't okay. Our mental health systems are more oversubscribed than ever. I think there are 5 million people on waiting lists in the UK for mental health appointments. 1 million of them are children. We're not okay, and so we're kind of aware of that. The church really cares. We are a partner in that. But we can't just get busier and busier, and it's just fascinated me, in fact saddened me, to be honest, that we have run headlong into the same amount of busyness we had before.
If we look, say at the Acts of the Apostles, we've got a handbook there in the Bible of how Jesus and the first church did it. But we tend to read that and reflect on it and then say, let's do something different. But what I'd like to do is to just talk a bit about the actual writing process, because obviously you had something on your heart that you felt was so important? This, how did Jesus do it? Let's look at that. But having a framework is one thing. Did you find when you went away in your shepherd's hut and you thought, I'm going to go really deeply into this, did you find that the process of reflecting, and I'm sure spending a lot of time in prayer, did that kind of take you over and shape your writing itself?
Yes. I mean, you see, I don't think I'm a writer. I'm a talker, not a writer. So I don't love the writing process, but I love thinking deeply about the word. So yes, when I was there, it was like, what are you saying to me, God? What is this about? What's this word about? And so to actually have time to really deeply reflect on that was it's such a privilege, actually. And to the discipline of going, I have to get a chapter out of this. I'm going to do a chapter. That was a real discipline to go, I'm going to put this down on paper, and that's going to be something that... And when your words are in print, the scary thing if you've never written a book is if you say some words in a meeting or whatever, you think, well, in this moment, this is what I think, and, I might change my mind tomorrow. If you've put it here, it's still going to be there in a lot of years' time, and people will go, oh, Ruth Rice thought this, and I think, well, I don't really. And I had to know that these words weren't just helpful for me, but they might be helpful for somebody else. And I think, otherwise, what's the point? There's enough books out there. We don't need more words in the world. So, yeah, it's been a real fascinating journey.
Yeah, and it was something that you obviously thought of and felt very passionately about to actually set the time aside to do it. So how much critical input did you have? Did you share with people the ideas, and did you talk to people about it? Loads. I've got loads of people in this family, this Renew family, as we call it. So if you think there's nearly 300 centres, and in every one of those centres there's about 10 hosts, 5 to 10 hosts. So you think of all those people for whom this isn't just my story anymore, it's everyone's story. And loads of them have fed into this book. So it's not a book where I've gone, experts and theologians, tell me what you think. This is where I've gone, broken people and people who are showing up. What's your part of this story? How do you see this? How does this Jesus story relate to what you're seeing in practice on the ground? So all the way through, at the end of each chapter, there's different voices that you're hearing, voices of different hosts. There's Sarah here from the Isle of Man talking about Renew Slanter She. There's different people who are, really benefiting from seeing what renewable sources of well-being look like in their life. And the lovely thing is that because you've pulled people in, everybody's experience is going to be different wherever they are, whether they're in Laxey or Lincoln or London. So all those experiences are going to be different.
They are, but they've all got this same, and they're all different denominations and people of faith and people who are journeying towards faith. But there's this same heart going through it all, because this wasn't my clever idea. This isn't, this Renew Wellbeing thing, whenever I've talked to people who get it, they'll go, oh, I was dreaming of doing something like that, but I didn't know it was a thing. And so over and over and over again, we're seeing people who are beginning to see in the character and life of Jesus, well-being, shalom. That the very thing that in mental health services they say people are looking for, well-being, is the very heart of the gospel. And I'm meeting people all the time. So I love that I could gather other people's stories in here. And that's probably my favourite bit of this book, actually, is other people's stories that I've been able to give some space to within this book.
Well, lifting people up and valuing them and treasuring what you can learn from them is of great importance to you. And the word shalom has become very important to you. And also, there are a few things that I've picked out of the book that I'd like to talk to you or ask you a little more about. But I think we're going to take a break. You've got a little bit of video for us to look at.
So this is published by Authentic Media, and I just want to thank the publishers because they've stuck with me. We've done 2 books this year. I've got another one coming out in May with my sister, which is the A to Z for children. And so they've had a lot. They have to put up with me a lot, the publishers. And Rachel from Authentic has got a little message for us because they couldn't be here with us on the Isle of Man. Here we go. My lovely team up there.
Hi Ruth. From all of us at Authentic Media, we just want to send huge congratulations on the launch of your new book, Renewable Wellbeing. Sorry we can't be with you, but we hope and pray that you're having a fantastic time. As always, it's been a pleasure to work with you on this book. We've had lots of laughs on the way, but it's just been a real privilege and honour to have just shared this journey with you. I remember when you first came to us with this vision for this book, and I just remember your passion and your heart for it that's just sort of poured out as you were talking to us, and we immediately caught that vision with you and that passion, and it's been fabulous to see that passion and vision has translated into the page as well, and it's such a book that could have potentially huge impact for so many people. So we're delighted and honoured that we are privileged to work with you on this one. We truly believe that you have something from God to say in this book, and we truly hope and pray that this book will impact individuals, it will impact the church, and it will impact those who are outside of the church, but just begin to see what this Jesus way of well-being could really mean for them and the attractiveness of Jesus. So we just pray that this will transform the church inside and transform the work of the church outside the church, and that many lives will be transformed and impacted. So we just want to say again, congratulations, enjoy your launch. And I say, we do really pray that this book will reach the people it needs to reach, and that lives will be transformed and impacted, and the kingdom will be advanced through the message and the God's power and vision that he has given you through this book. So take care, Ruth, and hope you enjoy your evening. Take care.
So, no pressure there then.
Oh, the power of God.
Yeah, lovely message, and really nice to hear from you publishers. They obviously value you very highly, and so and that, because I would guess that a close and understanding relationship with your publisher is really important.
Yeah, so if you've ever gone through this process, and if you do write if you do have a book in, you do write it, because it is a privilege to get to do it. But the editing process, it's like, you know, when you used to put your homework in and get it back with all red pen all over it.
Yeah.
Like, imagine that 3 times over on something you thought was quite good when you gave it to them the first time. Oh, it's hideous. And you know, my editor, bless her, Sheila, she's gone through all 3 of the books with me and is now done our 4th one. And so I'm very, very grateful to them for their help in it. Because it helps you to see that what you think God might have said to you might actually be of some value. And, you know, you're constantly putting yourself down in this process. And so actually to have your publishers cheering for you and thinking it's worth putting out there is really important. So.
You do have quite a lot of natural humility about, you know, for somebody who has come up with this, who is obviously such a powerful channel for God working through them, you know, to have started this and taken, there must have been some difficulties along the way, that things to sort out. Nothing that is good and of God goes absolutely smoothly right through to having 280 centres. So you've gone through all the trials that get you to really doing God's work, but there is a natural humility about you. You're always saying there's other people, and you've got a great team.
Jesus wants me for a doormat, people. So we are. My lovely parents. I hope you've managed to get online, Mum and Dad. Yes, you're amazing. And to be almost, I say it, I think in the next book I talk about being like overpraised, if anything, you know. If anything can happen. My sister's here, my other sister, my lovely husband, the kids. There's a lot of support, a lot of love in this. There's a lot of really good, like, unconditional love and support that says, oh yeah, you can do that, even when you're not really sure if what you've got to say is worth saying. And so it's really important, if you're going to write something, or if you've got something in you, that you get people around you who A, will speak the truth to you, but B, will also sometimes speak against the lies you say into yourself, you know, because in your head you're going, oh, that's rubbish, that. So yeah, it's difficult because it's not the same as Jesus' beautiful humility, is it? The sort of humility we have is often that false humility that says, oh, I'm rubbish, so that somebody will say, oh, no, you're not. And that Jesus never did that. He didn't think he was nothing. He made himself nothing. That's not the same.
No.
And so, yeah, I'm constantly looking, and which is why I've loved writing this. And I really hope as people read it, they don't go, oh, Ruth Rice, aren't you wonderful, Renewable Wellbeing? But they go, oh, Jesus seems fascinating. I'd really like to get to know him more. And that would be my biggest hope and prayer for the book, really, is that it points people to the source of well-being.
Yeah, which I think any book that involves Jesus, that's what you want, whatever the book is about. The ultimate aim of it is to point the reader to Jesus, to want them to know more about the person of Jesus. Okay, let's just a couple of things that I'd like to ask you about it. The word shalom has become of great importance to you. Tell me a little bit
Hebrew
more
word
about
shalom, I mean, we know it, don't we? And I think we translate it as peace. But when you look at the background to Hebrew, I mean, I love Hebrew. I don't speak Hebrew. That'd be great, wouldn't it? But if you look at the background to the word as it's written in the Old Testament, the sort of the shapes of the word, so Hebrew has shapes in it, and the shapes, and the M of shalom, are also the same as in the word shalem, and they're things like all paid for, nothing missing, sort of room for everything, a wholeness. And so this word is about, I think, about the very heart of what we're looking for in our mental and emotional health, which is saying there's room for sadness and for happiness, for joy and for sorrow, to be okay and not okay. There's room for everybody within this and every bit of life within Shalom. It's not jolly, jolly happiness, which I struggle with, because when I wasn't well, it felt like the church is sometimes pushing you towards being, the joy of the Lord is your strength, which is in the Bible, so it must be right. But joy isn't the same as happiness. And it's this idea that in shalom, in this word shalom, in this wholeness, there is room for everybody and everything. And that's where I think the heart of the gospel and the person of Jesus holds within it everything that people are looking for when they say they're looking for well-being. So, yeah, I love the word shalom.
I understand, but it's a great example of what we think we know a word means. Yeah. And if we look at the wider picture, it's got a great deal more to say to us. Okay, right, now, this is you've described that as your new word, and I can absolutely understand that. You've also said you've got a new rule of life that centres around the 3 Ps.
Oh, yeah, my 3 Ps.
Yes.
Yes. So the 3 Ps in Renew Wellbeing spaces are being present, being prayerful, being in partnership. So you're showing up, you're putting the kettle on, and then you're praying, you've got a prayer space, and then you're partnering with mental health services. So that's the 3 Ps. So in a Renew space, that makes sense. But in your own life, so I was looking for it too in the life of Jesus, I think in terms of, so we talk about rule of life, so this is this kind of idea, not like a set of rules, but like a kind of, like a plant grows up a trellis. That's what a rule of life is like. It's like a structure up which your life can grow. And so the habits of your life, the things you put in your diary, the times of meditation or prayer or your hobbies, those things that sort of shape your day, that's your sort of rule of life. And I think that there's something about the 3 Ps in my own life that's been quite helpful. So am I being fully present in this moment, right here, right now? Or is my mind wandering off somewhere else? Am I not right here with this person? Am I being fully present to the God who is present to me, to the person who is with me, and to myself? And then also in this moment, I might ask myself, am I partnering with other people? Have other people got my back? Have I got people who know me well enough to say the truth to me? Have I got people that I'm alongside? Am I doing this on my own, or am I? And one of the big culture shifts I talk about is, what does community look like? What is this community that we need to be part of? So these Jesus stories, in that one I talk about the boy and his little picnic lunch, and this just love. I'm going to preach on it here tomorrow, in fact, at Broadway. But this idea that we need each other. Our well-being is not just an individual thing, so partnering is really key. And then the sort of the prayerfulness. Our rhythms and our habits of prayer are so key. One of the chapters is about simplicity of habits, and a lot of my simple habits that came out of a time of brokenness were prayerful habits, really, about what if your life was an experiment in the practice of the presence of God. That's a Frank Laubach quote, but it's just this beautiful idea that Prayers are vital, primary language. And maybe as church and as individuals, as Christians, we've kind of lost our way with that and we get a bit busy. And so that the whole of the culture shifts I talk about in here are a call back to these sort of 3 Ps that say, how can we be more present? How can we be more prayerful? How can we partner better? And I suppose these 5 culture shifts that I come out of these 5 stories, which are, so firstly, what's our identity? How do we know who we are and whose we are? And secondly, what's our economy? What are we measuring? Why are we measuring it? What's important in our lives? Thirdly, what's community? Are we giving out of emptiness? Are we giving out of what we've got? Do we know how to receive as well? Simplicity, what are your habits? Are we living out of those? Are we sharing those? And then lastly, vulnerability. So this idea that brokenness and failure is not a problem. It's being human. And actually to own that, and I suppose, you know, one of the most important things that's been happening in my life has come out of one of the worst moments. And to say, God's interested in all that. He's present in all that. And so vulnerability, failure is an option. More than an option. And maybe if the church was a bit more human, does that sound awful? If we knew we were human beings. Like in the early days of Renewed, people used to say, can I come and volunteer at your project? And I'd go, oh, no, we don't have volunteers. Oh. I said, we've got human beings, so if you've got a hobby, maybe you could come and hang out with us. And then, oh, I don't know about that. I could come and help some poor people. And it's the idea that we're also the poor people. You know, what about if we fronted that and went, yeah, I don't know, I haven't got the answer to that, but I do like to do this, all right, and do this prayer. So there's something about knowing our own rule of life, our own rhythm of life, and just being able to say, I'm also not okay, but when I'm not okay, these are some of the things that help me. This is how I live with well-being. So.
Now, you obviously don't want this book just to sit on a shelf where somebody will read it and go, oh, this is really interesting. This is really challenging. Right, I'll pop it back on the shelf. And I must tell Ruth how much I enjoyed that the next time I see her. Now, you don't want that to happen.
Well, I don't mind if people tell me they enjoyed it next time they see me. That'll be fine.
Yes.
As long as that's not all that happens, yeah.
But you want it, how do you want it to be used? How do you see this moving the church along? How do you see it affecting us? What do you want us to do?
Well, what I dearly love is at the end of each chapter, there's a way to engage with that Jesus story more deeply, either on your own, on a retreat with others, or in a gathering, as maybe an all-age gathering resource. So what I'd love is for people to go, oh, okay, let's really take that story. So first story, John 2, it's the changing the water into wine. I think it teaches us loads about who we are, who Jesus is, and how we can know him, and what the gospel actually is and what it isn't. I wonder whether if we took a whole month with it and just went, oh, I'm really going to dig into this deeply. Or, you know, maybe there's 5 really good sort of all-age services in there for a church to really take on. Or maybe people go, and we're going to use this as a charity, every month we will take one of these chapters and have a day retreat that is online so people can join in with it, and take a whole day just to read the story, read it again, read it a third time, look at what Jesus is actually saying and doing, what does it mean in your life. So not just a glance, but to really be present, to really be prayerful, and to partner with God in what he's up to. I'd love for this book to spark a little bit of a where church becomes renewed in its well-being, not just Renew Wellbeing's a thing the church does for the poor mentally ill people, which is me. And it's not what it is. It's about seeing well-being as the primary language of the church, of prayer being its primary focus, of the practice of the presence of God being renewed in every church in every way. Wouldn't that be great? It's 50,200 churches, you know, Jews, just in the UK. So if every one of those just was present to one person in this way, that would be 50,000 less lonely people in the world. It'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
Yes,
so
it would.
I kind of love for everybody to go, every church to go, ooh, hang on, mental and emotional well-being, how are we engaging with that? And if it's not this, then something else, just pick something and do something about people's mental and emotional health, connecting to the story of Jesus. That would be great.
Yeah, it's what you're asking us to look at traditional church structures and seeing how it can be changed, or rather, this is how it sounds to me, and see how it can be changed so that the whole atmosphere is different.
Be lovely, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Is that just me? It might just be me.
Well,
I
no,
think I'm
because-
quite honest in the chapter on community, actually. If you want a little, I'm going to read what she says about that. That sounds a bit shocking. I'm quite honest about my struggle with local church at the moment. So I love local church. I led local church. I go to a local church, which I love. I'm in a local church right now. I don't think there's another plan. I think God loves his church, absolutely loves his church. But the gospel is so beautiful, and the simplicity of what's happening in our Renew spaces is there for people who are really anxious and isolated. But I keep meeting people who are Christians and not worshipping with anybody. I've dropped off the edge of church. I keep meeting leaders who've been broken by their churches. They didn't mean to break them, but there's such a lot of unhealthy practice going on in these slightly driven programs that we're running, that it concerns me that the very place where people should feel the safest at any point on their mental health journey is not always the safest. But what about if God got into that? And what about if we all just were more gentle in the way that we approached our well-being, our own well-being? If we became communities that practice well-being so that our communities around us went, oh, we could join them in that. It's like a kind of new monasticism, really, I'm imagining, is where we don't just have a thing once a week on a Sunday and a Wednesday night, but where there's this rhythm and habit of life that is deep and renewing and peaceful, and our communities know if there's a church there, that's going to be the best place for us to be, the safest place for us to be. And I know in the press that's not been the case recently, and I know that we have to acknowledge that there's people who've been hurt and broken because of churches. And we've got to own up to that and do better. And yet, the local church is full of these amazing people giving their time and their energy for nothing to their communities because they love God and they love people. So how do we do that in a way that doesn't damage us and doesn't damage other people? I think I'm seeing it happen. And I think I'm seeing it happen in Renew spaces, and I think I'm seeing it happen through these beautiful gospel stories. And I think we could see it happening more and more and more. I think it could be like a little quiet revival.
I think it could be a massive, loud, very shouty and very powerful revival. I think if we'll, but it has to start somewhere. You started off with one Renew space, didn't you, back in 2015? And look where we are in that comparatively short space of time. So the potential is enormous, and it's right, we are crying out for something different, aren't we?
I think so. Not everybody is. Some people are absolutely fine with the way it's going. But there are people outside of the church who don't know that they're welcome. I met a guy recently who said, I wanted to come to church, and I spent a long time on the internet looking for how you get a ticket to come. And I said, we don't need a ticket to come. I didn't know that. That actually, we might be putting on amazing things and doing wonderful things. Do our communities know that we're not just a club for the initiated? We're not privatizing the presence of God here. We are carriers of the Shalom of God, and we're also hosting spaces where you can belong. You're welcome with us. So I suppose with Renew, what we're doing is simplifying how you get through the door so that you can say, this is a place where it's safe for me to be. This is a place where it's safe for me to belong. But also, I carry a gift too. I'm a human being with a gift to carry. And then we see in Renew every person who walks through the door as a gift from God, not as a problem to be solved. And also every person who walks through the door is somebody who may well want to encounter the presence of God and probably wants to learn to pray. And probably most people do, actually. Rather than assuming people aren't interested, I assume they all are. Why would you not be?
Well, actually, research shows that people are more interested now than ever, but they are not as attracted by what we would call formal church.
I know.
But they're seeking a deeper meaning. They know that there's something there, and they want to find that expression. And maybe this is all part of it. Now, I'm giving a warning that, please, if you have any questions, come forward and drop a little note and let's have a look at those. But I must ask you, out of the stories that you used, Ruth, have you got a favourite?
Oh, yeah. Well, they've impacted me so much. I often say to people, I'm still the project. This is me. This is about, it's a bit selfish, really, this whole thing. This is about me just doing, I need to dig into this. But the last chapter about vulnerability, about being vulnerable, is the story from John 21 of Peter encountering Jesus at that breakfast brunch, and those 4 of the best words in the Bible, where Jesus, the risen Jesus, after he's gone to hell and back, says to his friends, come and have breakfast, and he cooks them breakfast on the beach. And it's so beautifully human and kind as well as divine, isn't it? Yeah. And I just love that at Peter's most broken he's failed so badly, and I love Peter, but he's failed so badly and he can't even catch a fish anymore. And there's Jesus cooking him breakfast. I mean, we wouldn't have done that, would we? We've gone to hell and back. We've beaten sin and death, and we want to just announce our risenness to everybody. We wouldn't go and cook breakfast for our friends. We'd be hosting some sort of big meeting that people may or may not come to, and that would be the economy of Jesus in this. And the vulnerability of it all is so beautiful. I love it. And I love that means that any one of us can be called by God to feed his sheep, to be bringers of goodness. Any one of us can at any time, but maybe only if we're prepared to be vulnerable enough to be the ones that he serves, that he comes to. And what I also love in this story is, he's got fish, he's got loads of fish, they're all cooking on the fire, but he says to Peter, bring some of the fish you caught. He doesn't need the fish that Peter caught, he's got fish. But he wants not just our problems to solve, he wants the goodness that we carry, even though he gave it to us in the first place. He wants our gift. He doesn't just see us as all these massive problems to be sorted out. He sees the gifts and the beauty in each person, and I suppose our journey with Renewable Wellbeing is helping us to see that too, to see people as, to see the face of Christ in each person, I suppose.
And when you do look at the stories of Jesus, there is a lot of simplicity in them. There's a lot of homely imagery. I'm thinking of when he raises the little girl from the dead and he says, give her something to eat.
Yeah,
he doesn't say, take her for a walk and show her to everybody. They are homely images. They are things that are very relatable, aren't they?
I think in the first chapter I talked to you about, do we know who God actually is? Are we going to trust him if we're not sure if he's trustworthy? If we think he's a little bit cross and disappointed with us, what is your image of who God is? And I talked from that story of the wedding at Cana in Galilee about how Jesus turned up at that wedding and then did a miracle because his mum asked him to. And it just is all very ordinary. And I think I was reflecting in the book that in my life I pushed Jesus to the edges of the ordinary, and he could do extraordinary things and I would have to run to catch up with him. I think until I exhausted my own sanity trying to catch up with the extraordinariness of God. And he is extraordinary, but he wants to show up in our very ordinary days. And in our waking and our sleeping and the way we treat the people that we're around and our thinking. And I think those ordinary things, that's where these rhythms and habits have really helped. And to share that ordinary life, that offstage life with other people, not just the big moments and the onstage moments and the what are we doing for everybody else moments, but the inner life stuff, the roots of our lives, if you like. Could we share those? Could that be what we front with as church? Could that be our primary consideration, is to attend to the roots rather than the growth above ground?
And so we need to buy the book, reflect on this, and then see how we can apply it. Ruth, would you like to read something for us from the book, please?
Yeah. Yes, I would. It sounded like I really wouldn't then. Because I just don't know quite where to land it, but I think I'll just read this little bit from the introduction, actually, to give you a little flavour of what I was trying to get at here. My own story of burnout, of using up all my energy, all my hope, all my shalom, and finding myself beyond empty, has not only led me to the habits and practices that now form a way of life and leading, But that season led me to see many, many others who were also crying out with exhaustion, isolation, and mental ill health. I met so many people in the shadows of community hiding like I was. I heard the thin cry of despair like I'd never heard it before, and I was undone by it. Renewability in power sources is a key factor in caring for our hurting planet. We will need to let go of some of the old ways of powering our lives and take a few risks if we're to meet our renewable energy targets. In our well-being, our shalom, our sense of peace and wholeness as individuals and communities, we need to tap into the source of peace that will not run out. I think local churches hold the keys to what that source could look like in practice. The old ways of sourcing well-being and energy in the church through many meetings, invitational effort, and busy rotas may need to give way to engage with more sustainable ways. I would love to see more simple habits, lifestyle changes, deeply prayerful practices that gently shift our culture towards knowing our identity, measuring success differently, being community radically, having simplicity of habits that we share daily, and grasping the truth that failure is an option as we engage in renewability. This phrase, renewable well-being, is something I believe is a description of all the life I am witnessing in Renew Wellbeing spaces so far. It encompasses not just a feeling of well-being that can be attained, but a state of well-being that we can dwell in by realizing it is renewable. It can be made new in us and through us here and now. And so that's the kind of flavor of it. And then at the end of each chapter, so I couldn't decide where to land with it, at the end of each chapter, there's a little poem or a blessing that you can use. And this is the one that I put at the very end. This is my blessing for you for renewability. May you know who you are. Fix your gaze on his face. May you measure your worth with the plumb line of grace. May you find real community, not journey alone. May your habits be simple. May your life be God's home. May well-being surround you and fill you each day. May you know you are called. May he teach you to pray. And remember the picnic, it's also for you. So sit down, tuck in, feed, for you're human too. Renewable well-being.
Ruth Rice, thank you very much indeed. It has been such a privilege to listen to you. Now, unsurprisingly, we don't have any questions. Now, that doesn't surprise me because
we've got one
you
over
have been.
here.
I'm
Oh.
sorry, we have one. We have a late entry.
We have a few people who've been active on the live chat. A few people from West Bridgeford, Fiona from the northwest. We've got Nairn, Nottingham, Northern Ireland, various places. There's a guy called Mark Rice who wants to know if you will sign a copy of his book.
Yes, love, I'll do it.
There we go.
I won't charge you more than a tenner.
And then we have a question from Pauline. The picture Ruth gives us is of what the church could be is so exciting. It's what we do in our Renew Wellbeing spaces. How do we get from one to the other?
So how do you get from a Renew Wellbeing space, which is a side product to Busy Church, to church that is being renewed in its well-being? No idea. But if you find out, write a book on it and let me know. I think I genuinely really believe it's tiny steps of saying, maybe once a month, we could just do things a bit differently, set up in a Renew style, invite people to have a little bit more choice within the gathering, have a slightly shorter talk, have a way in which prayer is much more a focus of what we do than just a thing we do at the beginning and the end. Maybe there's a way in which the things that we're learning in our Renew spaces of being present could be taught into a gathering, maybe all age. I think our kids have got a lot to teach us about well-being. And if we were to not just keep shoving them out to be doing some Sunday school, but maybe do some stuff together whereby we learn about what well-being looks like, that could be exciting. wait for the A to Z of Wellbeing for Children to come out, and I'll give you some ideas for that one as well. But I genuinely believe that the churches that are willing to say to their Renew spaces, out of the 300 we've got, could we do something here as people are coming to faith that looks a little bit more like what you do in a week, and we do it when we gather? It could be, but we don't have to gather on a Sunday. It doesn't have to be a Sunday, does it? It doesn't have to be, between 10:30 and 12 on a Sunday. There are churches that are experimenting with sort of midweek, after Renew time, some sort of gathering that is looking at the word and looking at worship in a way that is prioritizing the needs of the most vulnerable person in the room. Everybody benefits from it, but if we go at the pace of the slowest, I can often say, when I broke my foot, I learned very quickly that if my body didn't slow down to the pace of the most broken bit, the whole body started to hurt. And there's something about the whole body having the gift of people who are limping with grief and mental ill health. There's a gift to us as a church to slow us down and to say, how can we do this more gently for people who are... I was at a thing recently, actually, with some songwriters, Christian songwriters, Resound Worship, Resound Worship, and they were doing lament songs and saying, we're gathering lament songs, and people are saying, I don't want to sing lament songs, I don't really feel lamenty, and then, but you make people sing joyful songs every week, why would you make them lament on their own? Why don't we lament each week with people who need to lament, because they're going to drop off the edge of community because we're not singing how they're feeling. And there's something, isn't there, about us going, what would it look like to prioritize the one? What's our economy? What are we measuring? So my thinking is, if you engage with this book and the 5 culture shifts, one of them being, what are we measuring and why are we measuring it? We would care less about how many people we can get into a service and gathering, and more about the one that is crying on their own outside because they don't feel they belong, and make it work for them. That'd be a good start. But anyway, there's probably more answers than that. Good question, though.
We have another question here relating to your last chapter, and the question is, how do I model vulnerability without further jeopardizing my own mental well-being?
Ooh, how do I model vulnerability without jeopardizing? You can't. What I do, I wouldn't advise people do, because I feel like God has called me to kind of front my brokenness story, because then it helps people to go, oh, I actually feel like that too. I really wouldn't advise you to do that in front of a room full of people, or even a few people, unless you felt really safe. I think how do you do it? You find a few people you trust. As a leader, if you want to model vulnerability as a leader, you do it with your team. You get a team around you, and as a team, you don't set yourself up as some sort of person. I would get rid of every platform, to be fair, first off. Get us on a level with this thing, and then say, right, get people around you. And Jesus modelled this, didn't he? He didn't tell everybody everything all the time. He had 12 friends close, and 3 of those even closer. I think sometimes we feel like we've got to front everything to everybody all the time, and what we need to do is get a group of people around us who really get us and are with us and for us. So something like that. Great. Run out of time, Judith.
We have, haven't we? Yes. Bill, how are we doing on the questions? Have we pretty much covered it? Right.
Oh,
thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you.
But actually, I thought, I was surprised that there were any questions, and pleased, but surprised, because you were so comprehensive in the way that you've... And what you've done is, you've given us so much to think about, and a longing to say, yeah, we can do this. We may not get it right at first. It may take time, but it took you time to get Renew to the pace that it's going, the pace of growth. What I think is particularly important, and I promise you I'm only going to be quick on this, is that you're going to put material online so that people can watch that. And again, it's like the book, it's going to get us thinking and seeing how we can expand that and how we can apply that and how we can talk to people in our own context. I think it's a very, very exciting book. And thank you, Ruth, for all that you've put into it and for coming and talking about it. It has been, for me, an absolute joy and a privilege. And of course, the nice thing is that now we are going to adjourn to a Renew space here at Broadway,
You
which
wish
seems
you
to
were
be-
here with us now, all you people there. We're going to go to the most beautiful Renew space I've ever seen and have a nice cup of tea and a piece of cake. Is that right, cake? There'll be cake. There's always cake.
There's always cake.
It's the sixth way to well-being. Yeah.
Cue
Excellent.
for another book.
Oh, yeah, I might
Cake
write that one.
recipes.
Oh, just let me take that note down. A cake, the way to well-being.
Successful cake. Ruth Rice, that Renewable Wellbeing, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks,
and
Judith.
we look forward to your new book out in May of next year.
Yeah, A to Z of well-being for children. It's happening.
Can't wait. Thank you, Ruth.
Fantastic. Thank you both very much. So much good stuff. By the book, Renewable Wellbeing, available right here from the church's bookshop. If you're at Broadway tomorrow, also available tomorrow, or available on the island at the church's bookshop at any time, available from all good booksellers and on Audible as well now. So if you prefer to listen, you can get it on Audible. So thank you so much for being with us tonight, and God bless you.